Good. So Lydia Hall, tour professional. She's done almost everything that you guys are doing or will do in the future. And really like to thank Lydia for coming on this morning. She actually reached out to me about, well, it was the start of lockdown really, and said that she'd
Yeah,
love to
pretty
speak
much.
with our girls and share any knowledge that she has with you, especially from a female perspective and the journey that you might be going through and where your career could take you. So she has an absolute fountain of knowledge, has had an amazing both amateur and professional career. 13 years on tour now, I think, is it? You said, Lydia?
Oh no, it sounds terrible, doesn't it?
Yeah. No,
But yeah,
it's successful.
it is accomplishment. Yeah, it is. But yeah, I went to Q school in 2007. I was 19 at the time. Did really well at Q school, finished fourth at the first stage, second at final stage, and got my card, and haven't really looked back. Kind of kept my card every single year and had a win in between those 13 years, and hoping for a couple of more at least. That's the kind of plan.
Very good. Well, what we're going to do is I'll kind of start it off, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey. But I've asked all of the girls to prepare questions themselves. So girls, you can either put it in the chat function, and then I'll invite you to ask it directly to Lydia, or you can just, I mean, there's not that many of us on the call. There's 20 on the call. So if you want to butt in, you can try that as well. And yeah, I'm would really like you to be the ones asking the questions as much as possible, because as I said, Lydia, she's been where you are, and she's just wants to share anything and everything with you, so please do ask any question at all. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So maybe if we start at the start, Lydia, and you kind of tell us about your journey through golf, so how you got into golf.
Yeah, so pretty much I started at the age, it was in between kind of 11 and 12. I started going to junior coaching at St Mary's Golf Club, which is in South Wales, in Bridgend. And that's where I met my coach, and is still my coach to today, John Peters at Southerndown. He was just giving out free junior coaching on a Saturday morning. So I used to go along to that every week, and you know, I did every sport imaginable. Was doing taekwondo at the time, played netball, basketball, swimming, everything. And golf, obviously, then, still a little bit so, but then was, oh my God, it's an old man's kind of sport with the plus fours, and only guys play that. I'm not going to go and do that. That's stupid. But a few friends, I was getting a little bit jealous because they were going along to these free junior coaching sessions. So I just asked my parents, obviously, being the supportive parents they are, they said, yeah, of course, we'll take you along. Just fell in love with it. It was a challenge. It was always different and difficult. Yeah, and I was the only girl in the entire kind of junior section. So I was always playing with the boys, against the boys, which, you know, was great then, because I had to hit the ball a little bit harder to keep up with them. Then I joined the club as a lady junior member, and did pretty well. Then I started going to the Morgan County girls kind of sessions, which were on Sundays. I think Gower Golf Club was one of my first ones when I was about 13. And then progressed. I went to my first Welsh Girls Championships actually in Carmarthen when I was about 13, and did pretty well. You know, it was my first ever, you know, big event as such, the Welsh Girls Championship. Did really well, and I was off a handicap, I think it was about 10 at that age. And I was really surprised, but I got selected to represent Wales in the home internationals, the under-18s team, which was something that was kind of, you know, the next, you know, 2 years down the road was the plan. But I had a pretty good week. I got selected, obviously really honoured to do that. And then it kind of progressed, as I'm sure all of you are in the same situations, is 2 years later represented Wales in the European under 16, so it would have been the European Junior Team Championships. There was a 4-person team, and we went over to Italy, and it was one of the first times I think they sent a junior team. So went along to that, got selected to play in the Spirit Championships when I was about 16. We went to Texas, played in that, represented under 18s girls, under 21s, and just continued to go through the ranks of all the national things, as well as all the county girls teams, ladies teams. Won a couple of the Glamorgan Ladies Championships and the Girls Championships. And then I came to the age of around about 17, completed my A-levels, and had quite a few offers to go to America. But I decided that I kind of had enough of school and that I wanted to pursue becoming a professional golfer. Didn't have much knowledge or didn't have many girls to look up to at that age, because, you know, Becky Bruton, who was probably the latest girl to go and turn pro, who was about 6 years older than me, didn't really know her, so couldn't really ask many questions about, you know, how do you become a professional and what's it entail. So I kind of went there with, you know, not knowing much, but it was a 2-week tour school then in Italy. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a really, really good couple of weeks. I think it was 21 under par through 7 rounds of the entire Q school, and got my full playing rights for my 2008 season. And that's when I kind of started golf as a profession.
And Lydia, just on that, if you didn't kind of have, you know, current tour pros to bounce ideas off, or obviously you had your coach, John, but who kind of helped you through that period of deciding, well, you've enough with education, don't want to go to the States, and now is the time to turn pro? How did you decide that that was the right time for you?
Yeah, I think, you know, I had a great circle of girls who were in a similar situation. You know, Paul would have known the few of the girls that were in my squad, like Sarah Hassan and Brianne Laux. We had Kim Bolden in the squad, Mel Peak, Natasha. There was quite a good core of girls. And I think out of those, you know, probably 8 that were in the squads, I easily think at least 5 or 6 of us turned pro, whether it was PGA professional, 4 of us went LET. So we obviously all had those discussions between us. But the main influencer in my golf was John, my coach. We always discussed things of how to plan to get there. He had, you know, limited amount of experience, you know, playing himself on the Challenge Tour. So he kind of knew, and he was teaching, he taught Phil Price a few times and Stephen Dodd. So he had the experience and knowledge from, you know, what it takes to become a professional. So I bounced a lot of my ideas off him, but also Christine Langford as well. She was our national squad coach at the time. And, you know, she's a founder member of the Ladies European Tour. So she played on tour, I'm unsure of how many years, but very, very well experienced and knowledgeable. So I spoke to her quite a lot for a bit of advice on, you know, what does it entail? You know, how good do I have to be? How much is it going to cost? And how, you know, that's my career going forward. So what, you know, it's not a 9-to-5 job. So what do you kind of do? You know, when you're not competing, you know, where do you go? What do you do? How do you become a professional golfer really as a tour player? And there was definitely, John was the main person that I reached out for advice, but also Christine Langford, Maureen Medill as well, who was one of our coaches, who was a past tour player for several years. We're lucky to have her as well. So there was a good, you know, handful of people who I could reach out who have had experience, whether coaching someone or, you know, being on tour themselves.
And can you tell us a little bit about what that experience at tour school was actually like? Because it's, you know, it's a really intense week. You obviously performed very well at it. How did you approach that? Or, you know, what was kind of your mindset going into it? What was the week like? What could the girls expect if they were to go in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's pretty daunting because, well, I didn't really know anyone there, to be honest, because I think Melissa Reed went the same year I did. So obviously I would have known her. But other than that, there was, you know, there's a lot of international players. So there's quite a few girls from America, a few girls from Australia, and then the majority was filled with European players. And a lot of them would have been tour players who didn't keep their card and had to go back to first stage or even a final stage. But I think I managed it really well, my preparation, because again, John and I decided that, right, if you want to become a tour player, and we planned out for a 12-month before Q school. And I had a job. I worked in Tesco's, got a job, was going to the gym every morning. I played a minimum of 4 rounds a week, and I was scoring my rounds. So I was writing every single score down. So we really intensely planned it to prepare for what I was going to be going through at Q school. And then as the time kind of got closer, upped it more to kind of playing 7 rounds in a row, because that was what it was going to become. So we really planned it, and, you know, John helped in the sense that, you know, you're going to be there. There's going to be players who are bigger than you name-wise, and there's going to be players who are better than you there, but you know your game plan, and you've got to believe in yourself. But it was very daunting. I didn't really know anyone there. But on the flip side, I thought, well, I can come in under the radar here and just do what I've been doing and perform of how I've been doing it at Royal Porthcawl, because that's what I was a member of. And it put me in really good stead, really, for those couple of weeks. It was a long 2 weeks, because it was solid for 2 weeks, first stage and second stage, not quite as what it is now. And it's pretty intense. But I was kind of going there for one thing, and that was to win, not just to get a tour card. I was going to win Q school. And ultimately I came pretty close, so I was really pleased with that. But I think the biggest thing was making the decision a year prior, and then planning for that year, not, oh, Q school's coming up in 2 months' time, I'm going to enter. I think sometimes if you're in a good position, you know, if you've been playing well, then yeah, that might be a good option. But I think having that 12-month plan of this is what I'm going to do really, really helped me going into Q school.
Okay, great. And then when you got on tour, you said you didn't know anybody at tour school. Did you know many people on tour? How did you figure out traveling and kind of being out there in a completely different environment after leaving national squads and having those people around you? And a little bit about what life on tour is like when you actually get there.
Yeah, I
Very, very
guess, you
different.
know, it's totally different. And again, you know, I was lucky and privileged to be in that position of being in the Welsh national squads from the age of 13 until I turned pro, you know, at whatever it was in 2007. So for about 7 years, I'd had Welsh, you know, Wales, Golf Wales, paying for the majority of things that when I was going to compete and represent the team, European championships, whatever it was, home internationals. But then once you get your tour card, every single thing from the moment you step out of your door, you are then paying for. It's, you know, it's up to you to get your own individual sponsors. I mean, we're talking of £2,000 per tournament. And I was faced with that year was a record-breaking year with 32 events. So ultimately, you're looking at an investment of 64 grand to cover all your expenses. Obviously, at that stage, I didn't know it was going to cost that much. But yeah, it's very different. You have to be very organized. You have to know which airports you've got to fly into. And the LET will help with a certain amount of that, and the other girls as well. I knew, obviously, Mel Reid, Becky Bruton kind of tried to take me under her wing and help as much as she could. So I would just message her and ask, you know, well, what flights are you on to go to India, which was my first event as a professional. So yeah, I think it's not being scared to ask questions, and you know, it doesn't matter. They can only say no. So if someone doesn't want to help you, they'll just say no. But at least you've asked, and then you'll probably get the right answer or a help. So I think that's what I kind of went into, you know, my profession on the tour was, I'm just going to ask if I need help. If not, I'm going to figure it out myself. So I was out on my own. I planned everything. So I just used Google Maps to find where the nearest airport was. I used all the rental car companies, and yeah, you just figure it out. You're in this position, and you either make it or you don't. And I wasn't going to make it a failure. So I just, you know, tried to figure it out all myself. used John for advice, Becky Bruton for advice, and spoke to a few of the girls who were on tour at that stage as well, like Mel, you know, for travel arrangements, who they were flying with, and etc. But yeah, I think I've always been quite an independent person. So I've always, you know, if I've gone to an event, I've tried to book things myself, not let my parents do it. And I think that's always helped me. Whereas, you know, if you're the type of person who lets your parents do everything, and then you're out on tour and you can't do your washing because you're on a, you know, you might be on tour for 5, 6, 7 weeks and you can't do your washing, you don't know how to use the washing machine, or you can't cook food, then you're going to struggle and you're going to miss home a lot. So I think you've got to kind of prepare for all of those things. Otherwise it becomes a shock, and a huge adjustment that you've got to make. You've got to be super organized, because you've not only got to manage all of those aspects of travel, paying for things, booking things, but you've also got to imagine your entire schedule while you're on tour as well. You know, what times you're going to play practice rounds, what your practice sessions are going to be involved. If something's going wrong that week, when are you going to be able to fix it? And that's before you even get to a Thursday where you've got to be ready to just tee it up and play with whatever you've got on that first tee on a Thursday.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, Lydia, about how you manage your game while you're on the road? Like, again, obviously you probably speak with John about it a lot, but do you have a plan in place at the start of the year, and that kind of a routine that you stick through, or key things in your swing that you do your drills for, your checks for, that kind of stuff? Or how do you approach it?
Yeah, well, I think, again, because I've been with John for such a long time, I literally could be anywhere in the world and know that if there's an issue, I can pick the phone up and John will answer no matter what time it is, in the UK. And he knows by the tone of my voice, or if something strike pattern is happening with my golf swing, or something's bothering me swing wise, he can fix it within 5 minutes. So I've got that great relationship with my coach that I know that I can just ring him up and say, look, I'm not feeling confident this week. The turf, I don't like my turf, or there's quite a lot of shape of holes that I don't like visually. So then he'll help me sometimes to put a strategy and plan for those certain holes. That then I know that, okay, well, I've dealt with this situation. I don't like this golf course, because that happens a lot. And I think it's managing those, which have, you know, a lot of people don't recognize that sometimes it's horses for courses. Sometimes you don't like a golf course, but you've got to manage yourself, and because you're still there to earn money. And I think having the ability, that obviously comes with experience, but having the ability to recognize that really early in the week or during the practice rounds, can really help you. And I think I did that pretty well early in my career. I thought, hold on a minute, this, you know, I'm not playing very good, and what's going on? And a lot of the times it would be that I wasn't playing the par fives right. As an amateur, I was probably one of the longer ones, so I could get on the par fives. They were quite short, quite wide open, could get on and, you know, make quite a lot of birdies. But then when you're playing certain par fives on tour, it could be a little bit tighter, longer. I was still having that strategy of going for par fives into, and then kind of put myself in an awkward position to get up and down, and making, you know, sixes on par fives, or even the 7, and it would just take me out of the tournament. So I think having a strategy in place on the Monday, Tuesday, whether you walk the golf course, I've done that numerous times where I don't like the golf course. I've walked it, just to see what the visuals a little bit more of the shape of the holes. And that's okay to do, you know. If you don't feel like you want to play the golf course, you want to walk it and see, because you'll gain so much more sometimes from doing that than not liking the golf course and playing a practice round and hating every part of the practice round. It's not going to help you with your preparation. So I think, yeah, I go back to it, but having John, where I can, you know, could call him after my practice rounds and show him my yardage book and say, I don't like this hole. If I'm in this position, it gives me this shot. So I've always used John to kind of discuss golf courses with. But other than that, you're on your own a lot of the time. So you've got to be able to manage that and put strategies in place and understand playing of the game a little bit more. I think that was the biggest thing, turning from amateur to professional. I think sometimes I could get away with it, like I mentioned about the par fives. And I thought that if I wasn't playing well, it doesn't matter. But then when you're, forking out X amount of thousands to compete, you know that if you're not performing well, you've got to put some sort of strategy in place just to get the golf ball around the golf course. And, if it's 4 rounds of level par, that's pretty good. That'll always get you in the, in the top 20, if not top 15. And I think it's recognizing that early in the week that can sometimes it saves girls' careers by just being able to scrap it around a golf course, because you don't have to shoot 66, 68 every single round.
Jordan has a question there for you, Lydia.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to ask it there, Jordan?
Where's Jordan? I've only got...
Hi,
Jordan.
Did you bring John to tour school with you? Or if you didn't, was it ever going to be an option? Or
No, I didn't. And that was purely down to cost. Obviously, tour school in itself, I think it's, about £1,000 to £1,500 at the time. And then you got 2 weeks of accommodation to pay for. So I just had this little Italian lady who was probably shorter than me. So she was about 5 feet, pulled my bag, and she literally did the best job. She didn't speak much English. And sometimes that's the best thing for you. And I was just really good that I spoke to John every night via email, explained everything about the golf course and how I was feeling. And he did his best with, being a little bit blind because he didn't see the golf course, in helping me and supporting me. And I think in Q school, the main focuses should be on the golf course and how you manage yourself on the golf course, because you're going to be under pressure. So most of the time it's not about your golf swing. You've got to turn up to that tournament, being as mentally fresh as you possibly can. And I think having John there might have been good, but I'm glad I didn't, because it turned out pretty good. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I think knowing what is right for you, because I didn't want to go into Q school with a lot of technical thoughts. I knew it was going to be 4 rounds of golf and, shooting and performing as well as I could. And the less that I can think about my golf swing and just have certain drills in position that give me the strike that I want to have, because that's what I get all my confidence from, is how I'm striking the golf ball. I don't really care how my golf swing looks. So he's been to a few tournaments throughout the 13 years. But during those 2 weeks, it was purely down to a financial cost situation during that time. And I don't think he could have probably afforded the time for the 2 weeks to come out as well. But good question, really good question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. Harriet, do you have a few questions? I think you sent some through. Would you like to ask one or two? Can you hear me?
Was there anything in particular that made you turn professional?
It was competition. I absolutely love competing. And that was the ultimate thing. I wanted to have a profession, and it ended up being golf, where I was competing for a living in sport. I'm not a gambler or anything, don't worry about that. It was having that ability to perform and win and compete against other teams. But obviously in golf, it was other individuals, and it's a pretty good job. I mean, you get to travel the world, have thousands of people while you're traveling and doing the job that I love. So the attraction was competing, for money and trophies.
Stuff. Paul, Charlotte, do either of you have a question at this stage for Lydia? She's mentioned some interesting bits and pieces there that I'm sure you'd like to pick up on.
I've got quite a few questions, but I don't want to steal the time of the girls, but I'll go ahead with a couple if that's okay, Lydia.
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
We talk to the girls a lot about the journey, this journey they go on, is to really enjoy the journey, not just the destination. And obviously 13 years experience as a tour professional, it's not always straightforward, that journey. So sometimes you might take a wrong turn, dead end, setbacks, injuries. If any, have you had any? And if so, how did you address any setbacks, dancing?
Oh, definitely.
Or anything? How did you get back on track?
I have probably had more setbacks than I've had wins in the 13 years. And I think that's the part of me that will keep driving myself to get better and win more, and hopefully win the Order of Merit at some stage, get in the Solheim Cup, because I have this ability that even when it's really rubbish, there's been so many times I've got off the golf course, cried, gone straight back to my hotel room and slept in my golf clothes, like, because I just don't even want to talk to anyone. There's been times when I thought that's it, I'm done, I'm going home, I'm not playing golf anymore. And there's been times where it's been the best job in the entire world, and it is a roller coaster. I snapped my anterior cruciate ligament in my knee, which took me out of the game for 9 months, and cost me £6,500 as well. I've had a shoulder injury, which took me out of 2 tournaments, but I've touched wood. I've been really, really, really lucky with injuries. I haven't suffered, wrists or anything like that. It's just been one stupid injury on my knee that took me out for a very long time. And there's been times where golf, like it's 2013 and 14, my golf was horrendous. I managed to keep my card, but I actually said that I don't even deserve to have my card. I finished 79th on the Order of Merit, and at my standards, I played horrendous. And there was a point after that, for 2 years of playing really bad, that I thought, maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I should just stop and get a normal job, because, you're just not getting the results that you should be getting. But something inside of me is saying, no, just keep going. You've spent, all of this amount of time, and John has spent all the hours he has, helping me, and my parents have spent so much time and money as an amateur that, I almost want to do it for all of those people as well, not just for myself. So that continues to give me the drive to keep going, and knowing that at some point I'm going to get a decent run for hopefully a couple of years. But there's definitely a lot more setbacks, and golf, all of you girls know that golf can change from the front nine to the back nine, from a morning to an afternoon, and from day to day. It's never ever the same, and I think that's what makes us all crazy in playing the game that we do, because it's never ever the same, and you can't really control the outcome.
Lovely, thanks, Lydia. I think we might come back to you at the end again, Paul, but there's been a lot of questions flying in there all of a sudden.
That's trigger them all off.
Yeah. Charlotte is going to have to jump off the call in a few minutes. She's got a busy Sunday morning, but
no problem.
Do you have any questions, Charlotte, that you would like to ask before you leave?
Only the one, and Stock, it comes from a mindset perspective, but it just fascinated me how you talked about Q School, and being really in the right mindset whilst you were out there, and the technical side of things took more of a back seat. You had your drills in place to ensure that you were in a good place there. What did you do in order to, and what do you do, I suppose, even now, to ensure that you are in a good headspace to go and play golf? And when you're out on the course, if for any reason that mindset decides to dip and you find yourself, really under pressure, how do you cope with that? What strategies, or do you have any strategies that you put in place for that?
I think while I'm on the golf course, if things are going, a little bit in the wrong direction, then I tend to have a strategy that I start throwing things in the bin, not throwing things in the bin to try and remove that error. So whether it's, I don't know, I've just doubled a par 3, as I'm walking to the next tee, I'll throw my ball in the bin. So it kind of gets rid of that hole. You see loads of tour players throw in a golf ball in the lake. That could be out of anger, I don't know. But that's one kind of thing that has helped me try and get rid of things, because that has been an error of mine that I've held on to, my mistake, taken it into the next hole, made another error, and then taken into another hole, and then made another error, and then not dealt with that situation sooner. So it's taken in the past 2 or 3 holes, instead of it should be after that ball's, you know, been in the hole for your double or whatever it is, then you just get rid of it and move on straight away. And I think as planning for a tournament, so like Q School, I think that having that strategy and having a plan that I had for an entire year, which seems a lot because you're building it up almost to be something greater than maybe what it is, but ultimately I had a plan in place, and I was living that entire year, you know, as a professional golfer. So I was waking up at 6, half 5, 6, doing my stretching, doing my workouts, going to practice for a couple of hours, and then going to my job to earn some money, and then finishing it off with another practice session in the afternoon. So ultimately, I think planning is one of the biggest things. You can, you know, plan as much as you like for a situation that you think might happen, but also having a strategy in place where if things go wrong is a must, because it takes too long sometimes for people to figure it out that, you know, you can't let things bleed and get into the next hole. You've got to deal with it straight away as it happens.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks for that, Charlotte, and
No
thanks
problem.
for joining. Okay, Fionn, you're up. You have a couple of questions there, I see. Can't hear you. There we go.
Sorry, my dog's having a fit after Lydia's dog started barking. So my first question was, what would you say has been your greatest struggle between being an amateur and then turning professional?
I would say the biggest struggle is finance. So it's finding sponsorship. That is the hardest thing in women's game, because we don't get enough airtime on TV. That doesn't then necessarily attract a lot of sponsors. Whereas, you know, for the guys, it's super easy. They say they're on the European tour and they can get a car the following day, get a clothing deal the following day, get free golf clubs the following day, and get a hat sponsor with 100 grand the following day. But in the women's game, unfortunately, because we're not on TV as much, that's really difficult. So if anyone is planning in the next year or 2 years, try and think of things for when that time does come around to kind of get sponsors in place, because that will take a lot of pressure off you. Because ultimately, you know, if you know it's going to cost you 2,000 to cover all your expenses for one tournament, that's top 20. So you've got to get a top 20 position every single week to even make a profit on an average European Tour event, Ladies European Tour event. So that's the biggest burden in female professional golf, is sponsorship, because your winnings then, for me at the moment, my winnings go straight back into the pot to pay for my next event. And then, you know, hoping that you get a couple of runs of a few top 10s and maybe a win would be really nice. But the biggest burden is definitely the sponsorship and the lack of.
Okay, and then thank you. And then my other question was, in hindsight, what would you say that would you say that there's anything you do differently as a junior golfer or an amateur?
No, I don't think there is. I worked my butt off. So I couldn't have worked any harder on my golf. I went to Royal Porthcawl every day after school, you know, obviously when school homework allowed it. In between my free sessions, I used to go down there. So I worked as hard as I could, but my amateur career wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be. But saying that, I'm kind of glad it wasn't as well, because that actually, you know, as soon as you turn pro, no one on tour cares what you've done as an amateur. No one cares if you have won the British Open. They don't even know if you will have or not. They will not care. So it made no difference turning professional to my amateur career, of what I did or didn't do, what side I got into or didn't get into. Because as soon as I had that tour card, played my first tournament, I was one of them, and they don't care. They don't care what you've done. Everyone is there to win that week. And whether you've played GB&I or, like I said, one British amateur, no one there will care. So I think having that information takes a lot of pressure off quite a lot of you girls, I would imagine, is that use your amateur career to gain as much as experience and take as much information off Paul and all of the staff as you possibly can, because as soon as you turn pro, you'll be paying for all of that information that you're getting now yourselves, and it's invaluable of what the information that you can get now as an amateur, because like I said, it'll be coming back, cash will be coming out of your pocket when you turn pro to pay for those individual psychology sessions, nutrition, S&C, coaching sessions, all of those sessions. So take as much information and use this amateur, journey as much as you can to gain as much experience of playing as you possibly can, because ultimately when you turn pro, if some of you decide to do that, like I said, I can't emphasize that as soon as you get out there, you are just Fionn, Lucy, Alice, whoever it is, that's who you are. They sometimes don't even know where you're from. So I wouldn't even worry about, have your goals in mind of what you want to achieve, but don't think, I can't turn pro because I haven't won the Welsh Open, or I haven't won the British Am, or I haven't gotten the Curtis Cup, because it means nothing when you turn pro. If you want to have a really successful amateur career, then obviously that is going to matter, and you will get in teams from having all of that success. But if it's the professional game that you're after, then use this as a journey to gain as much experience and knowledge as you can.
Thank you.
That's brilliant.
That's okay.
Lydia, you touched on a point there around, working part-time while you were practicing and preparing for tour school. Similarly, you would have probably been, going to school and practicing while you were a junior amateur. I think Gracie had a question for you around that.
Sure.
Hi. My question was, did you always believe that you'd be a tour player, or if not, when did you start believing?
No, I didn't. I think from the age when I made that decision so I would have been 17, 18, when I made that decision that I was going to go to Q school in a year's time, that's when I started believing, and I had to believe, because I'd made a decision. There was no plan B. I was going all in. And from that moment, preparing for a year, playing all the amateur stuff, working out in the gym, doing all of the stuff that I need to do on that side of things, and practicing and playing as much as I could while I had, like a part-time job. I had to make it work. And that was from that moment when I made that decision, I was going to be a professional golfer, and there was no kind of if or if not. It was all in, and that was the decision. And there was kind of focused, the blinkers were on, and that was the focus of what I was going to be doing. But like I mentioned earlier, there was no women's golf as such. I think the British Open maybe being the only women's golf event on Sky Sports, even not even BBC. So, and magazines, you couldn't get hold of, it's not like Instagram where you see all these golfers online, and you had no one really to kind of look up to. We had the Welsh Open then, which is where I got probably my main inspiration, is watching the girls at Royal Porthcawl when we had the S4C Wales Championship of Europe, I think it was called. It was one of the biggest Ladies European Tour events on the schedule. So I got to see a few of those players up close and personal, and watch what they could do. And that was probably at the time when I thought, okay, I really want to do this. And then a couple of years later, I made that decision and went all in.
Super, thanks.
Thank you.
Kath, I think you had a question there around practice.
Hi, Lydia.
Hello, Kath.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, like, what does a typical day's practice look like for you at the moment, and what games and drills are you doing to keep your game competitive, ready for when you do restart?
Yeah, so it's obviously a little bit difficult at the moment because we don't know when we're going to start. So I'm the type of player that kind of keeps things ticking along. And then when I get kind of close to 2 to 3 weeks, probably at the most, then I'll up it to making it more competitive and more results based. But at the moment, I'm doing quite a bit of technical work. So like, for instance, my day tomorrow, we'll be up about 6:30, do all my stretching, then I'll do a 3K run on the treadmill because I've got a bit of a heel situation going on. Then I'll do all of my core stuff, come back, have a little bit of breakfast. So that's probably taken me to 9 o'clock. Then get to the range, probably between 9:15. Probably do some range work for about 2 hours, and that'll be just working on technical things that I've been working on forever and a day, and probably will always ever and a day be working on. And then grab some lunch and then play 18 holes at 1:30. And then once I'm done with that, I'll head back into the gym, probably only do about 45-minute gym session then, and have dinner. And I think there's a footy game on tomorrow night, so we'll watch that on TV.
Cool, thank you.
But as for drills right now, so if I expand, as it gets closer, then I'll start to do a lot more of 100 yards and in. So I will, when I'm playing, I'll play an additional ball from different distances. So maybe on the first hole, I might do 100 yards. The second hole, a pitch. The second hole, I'll have a 90-yard pitch or a number of the 90s. Then third hole, I'll do 80s numbers, and so on and so forth. And then probably on the back nine, myself and Amy, who's a fellow tour player as well, we'll do an up and down competition on the back nine. So we'll chuck it in the dirty spots as difficult as possible and see who can win the money and who can get the most up and downs. But it's once it gets closer to kind of competition time, it becomes more specific on my scoring. So throughout the week, I'll mark 4 cards and mark all my stats on the cards and see where I'm looking. And then do quite a lot of short game as it comes closer to the time. A lot of, up and down skills tests, the pelts tests. I still use those, and a lot of distance control. They're the main things that I work on closer to the time.
Thanks for that, Lydia.
That's okay.
Do we have any more questions from the girls? I think, Leanne, you had one in there somewhere. Did you? Can you see that? Oh, you're on mute. Go again.
Hi, Lydia.
Hi.
Would you suggest, while working towards pro, would you look at getting any coaching qualifications or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've actually had that string to my bow. So I've completed 2 years of my PGA teaching as well. So that was when I was down and snapped my ACL. There was no way I was going to be sat in the house not doing anything. So I just started my PGA teaching training program. So then I kind of got a job at a driving range while my knee was still doing all the rehab on my knee. And I completed 2 years of that. And even though I had been on tour for 10 years, 8, 10 years, whatever it was, and had coaching my entire life. So I had quite a sound base of and knowledge about the whole of the game. I still learnt quite a lot at the PGA. And I definitely think if you're someone that maybe doesn't want to go to the States, is not quite ready to turn pro because they're not sure if they're good enough, or they want to have a little bit longer to prepare, but want to have a little bit of competition and learn more about the game, but also have a backup plan if things go a little bit sideways or in the wrong direction. I would definitely suggest doing the PGA training because you learn a lot about, not just about the golf swing. You learn so much about biomechanics of how the body moves while you are swinging a golf club, the influences that your body has. you learn a lot about finance. So, you know, I'm self-employed. Most teaching professionals are self-employed. So you learn about, you know, those aspects of, you know, what it takes as well. So that will be versatile, whether you become a teaching professional or then you do turn pro. You've still got to manage all your finances yourself anyway. So yeah, if you are talking about the teaching side of the PGA, I would definitely advise a lot of the girls to do it. If you're in that kind of category of you're a little bit unsure, but you love golf and you might want to teach, but you might want to play, there's a lot of playing opportunity with the PGA teaching program as well.
That's super. Thanks, Lydia. We actually have a session next week on careers in golf, and we'll have PGA Pro. We'll talk about their journey. I'll talk about mine.
Yeah,
things
perfect.
like that. So it's good to hear, that you've kind of done something almost in parallel with your playing career, and it doesn't take from it. It only adds, if anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Emily there has a question for you about school.
Okay.
How did you balance school and golf as a junior?
Okay, so what age are you talking about right now?
Like 16, so exams.
So exams, GCSEs. So during that age, my mum was pretty forceful on no golf until you've done all your homework and your exams. So I kind of stuck by that because that was my mum's only kind of rule with my golf, is that you have to complete your A-levels. You're not dropping out at 16. You have to complete your A-levels or go to college. And then you can do what you want when you're kind of 17, 18 and you completed everything. So I balanced it. Obviously, you've got the summer now, and I know it's lockdown, so it's a little bit different, but I used to either get up extra early, so as soon as the sunrise. It depends, again, if you've got transport and you can do that. But I was lucky enough, I did have transport, so I could go early, especially if I had a free period in the morning. I would go and do an hour if I could, or 2 hours on the range, or putting or chipping, whatever I was working on at the time, then go to school. And then if I had free periods during the day, I would go to golf during those periods. And then after school, I would complete all the homework that I had. And then if it meant that there was only an hour of daylight, then I'd just go and use that hour and use it wisely in putting, bunker play, whatever it may be. But schoolwork has to 100% come first, in my opinion. You've got to get it done, because if you go all in on your golf and it doesn't work out, then you're going to struggle to get any kind of decent job that you all deserve. So 100% get all your schoolwork done. And if it means that you can only do half an hour of mirror work in your bedroom with a shortened club, then do that, because that will just have as much benefit as going to hit 60 or 100 balls. But you've just got to be really strict on your time management. And if it means that you've got to start planning, I mean, I'm all for, if you were to see the stuff that I plan, as in my entire days are scheduled from 6 until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And for every hour, I know what I'm doing for every day of the week. So you've kind of got to be that planned, so you don't waste any time and waste any opportunity to get some practice in when you've got work, or right now, as most of you have got school and homework and exams. So plan, that's all you've got to do. Is you know how many hours in the day, so just plan of each hour what you're going to try and squeeze in.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Lydia. Because I think that's something that we've tried to help the girls on a lot in all of the squads, is their planning and getting better at that, because they have such limited time. But 15-20 minutes of planning can actually make sure that you get like such a quality day, rather than using that 15-20 minutes practicing.
Yeah, usually this time of on a Sunday night, if I'm traveling to my tournament, then I use that time on a plane to plan what I'm going to do as soon as I get up on the Monday morning, which is the first practice round. And then I'll plan on the Monday afternoon what I'm going to do for the Tuesday, because it all differs when you arrive at a tournament. But if you don't like planning, you're gonna have to get to like it, because it, you know, even if you decide not to become a golf professional and you get a normal job, you're gonna have to be able to time manage, and you're gonna have to use your time wisely. So just get into the habits of doing it now, and it'll make it so much easier in the next kind of 5 years time.
Super. Kath has a really good question there, because you've told us a lot about kind of, I suppose, the difficulties or what you need to do, but Kath's question is great here, so we'll better ask that and then wrap up shortly after that, I think.
Oh, okay. How did it feel to be the first woman to win the Welsh National PGA Championships against the men?
I don't think it was very popular, but yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it was the first time that I'd entered, and obviously I'd read up on the history of it because, you know, John, my coach, he's played in it pretty much every year, I think. And yeah, the first couple of days I had a really good group. I played with Gareth Howell, who I did a couple of years of my PGA training with him. Yeah, and it was amazing. I mean, I played really well, and I think I managed myself. And I think because I had that, you know, I'm playing with guys who probably don't get to play nowhere near as much as I do, other than, you know, Phil Price was playing. I think Stephen Dodd was playing as well. But outside of that, most of the guys playing are, you know, full-time teaching professionals. So don't get enough time to play and practice as much as I do. But I'm definitely proud to have that trophy. Yeah, and it was an amazing week because John was there as well. He hasn't been there when I've won other events, and he was there. So yeah, it was a real honour to win, and a real proud moment.
Super, thanks, Lydia. Paul, do you have any question? I think we've gotten through most of the girls' ones there. Do you have any question you'd like to ask before we wrap up?
Yes, please. Obviously, the strength of the tour now, well, even for the last 10 years, has been so strong.
Yeah.
Lydia. And winning, as you did in 2012, I think it was,
Yeah.
was it? Obviously, the girls are competing to win. How tough is it when you're, say, in the last three ball or second to last three ball, you know you're in contention? How do you close out a tournament? How do you win? What sort of tools do you need, and how do you keep your focus?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is managing yourself when you're in those situations, because you've obviously, your golf's good enough, you're in that position. So I think it's understanding yourself and realizing how you react when you get in that situation. I mean, when I think I was 1 or 2 back. I was in the final group, 1 or 2 back, and it's the strangest thing because that entire week I had a guy, Lee Griffiths, who was caddying for me the first time. He was caddying for me that week. He's a tour player. He got Mel Reid over the line 3 times, I think, when she was struggling to win. I don't know how many times she'd finished second. Started working with him. She won 3 times. So I was like, okay, this is my opportunity here. And as soon as I had that confidence that I knew he was going to be on my bag, that lifted my confidence. The things that I'd been working on with John, I was really pleased with. And the golf course, when I arrived, I thought, oh, wow, I love this place. This is so pure. And the golf course really suited me. And no word of a lie, but after the second practice round, I knew I was going to win. There was no doubt in my mind that I wasn't going to win. And I'm not saying this to sound big-headed or because I've never had that ever before then or since then. But for some weird reason that week, I knew I was going to win. And I just kind of went through the motions, and I shot 6 under the first round. It was a 3-day tournament. The second round, I think I maybe shot level par or a couple under. And then I was in the final group, and I was either 1 or 2 back. And I knew that if I could kind of manage the person I was in the group with, and make her feel that I was more confident than her, that I was going to win. And that's what I did. I kind of hit a really good tee shot down 1, made a really good par. The second hole, I'm not going to go through the entire round, don't worry. The second hole, which was actually the turning point, so it turned pretty quickly. I knew I had to kind of put a certain amount of dominance in the group So I hit a really good drive, and I thought, right, I'm going for it. So I went for the par 5 and 2, knocked it on, and she didn't knock it on. I made birdie, and I think she might have bogeyed the par 5. So it was a 2-shot swing, so I'd already gone one in front. So I kind of managed it really well, and Lee was obviously on my bag, and he wasn't letting me go more than 2 paces in front of him. He was telling me to slow down, be calm, just breathe. We're going to win this, but you've just got to manage yourself. And I had a bit of a hiccup. There's one hole, a par 3, and I pulled it left. Double crossed myself because I was just trying to hit a high cut in there. Pulled it left and made double. So I think I then moved myself to 1 back or something. But I knew there's a par 5 coming up in another couple of holes, so I managed to pull that back. But I just managed my breathing and it sounds so cliche, but it 100% is 1 shot at a time. And that's what I did. I knew there was going to be a par 5, so I just had that in the bank, and just focused on the kind of next tee shot, making sure that was on the fairway, trying to smooth things out after I'd had that double, make a par on the next hole, and then try to pull it back as the round went on. But when you're in those situations, my first tournament win as a professional, I couldn't feel my hands. Like I had no feeling of pace in my hands at all. And especially as the round got on, it got worse. So much so that I 3-putted the last hole because I put it in the middle of the green, but if the pin was at the back left, I had left this 45-footer, I think it was, to lag it up there, and then missed this 4-footer. But luckily I had 2 shots lead coming down the last, so I had a little bit of a buffer. But it's definitely using your experiences now as an amateur and write it down. Please write everything down of how you feel during rounds and during pressure, because you can keep that little book and have it when you turn pro, or you're in that similar situation again, and then that actually I felt like that in this tournament and this is what I did and it worked. So you can then use all of that information in the future when you put yourself in that situation, and you can manage it. And that's what I'm waiting to do. I'm trying to get myself back in that bloody position.
Yeah, I love that advice, Lydia. We encourage the girls to keep a diary and review honestly, accurately all the time. And that's great advice. Thanks very much for that. That's brilliant.
No, not at all. You have to, because your memory has only got a certain amount of gigabyte in there. You're not going to remember every single shot that you hit, every feeling that you have. So even if you don't have to show it to anyone if you don't want, just have it there for your own sake, because it will save you shots and it might one day win you a tournament. So definitely do it. That's the biggest advice is from today, even if you take away, plan and make notes of your feelings and emotions on a golf course, even if you just take those 2 things away.
Yeah, excellent. Great advice.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Lydia. And I think it's probably a really good way to wrap up the session. I'm sure we could speak all day. But you've given so much useful advice and information and been really open and honest with it all as well, which
good.
I certainly appreciate it, and I'm sure the girls do as well, and that they've taken a huge amount from it. They do send me back their key learnings from any of these sessions that we do, so it'd be great to get those from you girls. And I've also recorded the session as well, so we'll probably be showing you at every squad session for the next 5 years or so. There'll be nuggets popping out here and there.
From personally, girls, if you've ever got any questions, don't be scared to just ask, okay? Because you can send a message on anything, Instagram or whatever, on my website, anything. Don't be scared to ask questions, because I wish I had someone to ask questions. And that's what I was saying to Jillian a couple of days ago, is that I wish I could have picked someone's brain and annoyed them. Please annoy me and ask questions, because I want fellow Welsh tour players winning. And I want us to get a Welsh pro event back on the schedule. So the more success we get in Wales, the more we can get a female tour event, and then the more female golfers we can produce again in the next 5-10 years, and one of you or 2 or 3 will be sat here talking to the next up and coming girls.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, and we're all behind you and wish you well for your career and for the upcoming season and everything like that. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you back in Wales in the not too distant
Definitely.
future and get another chance to speak to you. But thank you so much again.
Not at all. Good luck, girls. Keep sane in lockdown, and if you can't do anything, read as much information as you can. Good luck, girls, and hopefully see you all on the LET in a couple of years.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, girls.